First of all, thanks a lot to the chair and the deputy chair, Dr. Ramandeep, and to all the fellow panelists, and to the medical fraternity. A very good afternoon. I know I am the second last speaker between this session and lunch, so I'll try to keep it interesting by talking about heart matters. Right? Dil diyan gallan. So let me start by sharing my own story. I had a heart attack at the age of 42. Right? I won't say how many months or days or years back. You will calculate my age. Right? But, you know, I was chairman of a Japanese company. I was leading global businesses, having, you know, breakfast in Japan, lunch in Middle East, and dinner in America as if there is no tomorrow. But then suddenly I had a heart attack, and that was probably an awakening moment for me to realize that, no, something more has to be done. And that's where I think if I had something like this, Dr. Ramandeep mentioned the ECG device, along with the platform that we have from NanoHealth, the company that I joined as a co-founder. I think probably I could have been able to avoid the attack that I got. So let's talk about how. So that's the topic of my presentation, that how using, you know, a digital platform, an integrated digital platform, we can actually try to do risk stratification and save lives, right? So we've heard a lot about the data already. You know, Dr. Tausif mentioned about, you know, that heart attacks are the leading cause of death in India, the disease of the burden of non-communicable diseases in India, and so forth. And of course, you know, news and media keep on highlighting, and that's where we suddenly wake up and say, no, we need to do something about it, but we don't know what, right? So we have these celebrities who hit the news, the front page in the last 6 months or so, right? And yes, again, validation of some of the data that has already been talked about, so I'll not get into details here. But what is more important here is that most of these, 70% of these adverse cardiac events or heart attacks or deaths are happening in the most productive age group of 30 to 60 years. So what can be done to prevent that? And especially post-COVID, how can a point-of-care ECG device help us do some risk stratification through proven medical grade data and medical grade device? So we know that, you know, if there is a QT interval prolongation, the correlation between that and heart attacks and so forth, and then also arrhythmias, how they lead to, you know, cardiac, adverse cardiac events. So how we can actually use a point-of-care device to prevent adverse cardiac events, especially in workplaces, because the cost of loss of productivity because of cardiac events or cardiac diseases, you know, has been talked about, you know, anywhere between $100 to $350 billion, right? So I don't need to validate the numbers because, yes, different sources have different numbers, but that's the burden of the disease. So now all of us in the medical fraternity, either we can keep on trying to see that the boat does not sink, right, by trying to keep the, you know, water, putting the water out of the boat using a bucket, or we stop the tap from where the water is continuing to flow in and plug the holes. So that's the key difference between a proactive approach and a reactive approach. So how can we actually try to be more proactive as a medical fraternity for the organization's health that we are responsible for? How can we actually take a more proactive approach? Yes, we do a lot of things currently, you know, not to mention that, yes, you know, the awareness is not there, the programs are not there, all the instruments that you use, the investments that are being made, you know, but there are so many different pillars. How can we actually see that we are able to move more towards a more structured way, a consolidated, integrated way of being able to measure an ROI as well? So we talked about, you know, smartphones. So all of you have smartphones, right? What is the difference between a smartphone and Nokia, you know, 1100 or 3100 or 3300? It's smart, but how? It essentially provides you a platform to integrate all or most of your requirements. If you want to order food, it's on a single app. How many of you still use SLRs or those big cameras, or you use mobile for your camera? Raise of hands. Everyone uses mobile mostly for your photography? right? So then why not in healthcare can we actually look at a platform which integrates all these smart devices which are coming in, all these applications that are there, and use technology to create that complete cycle of coordinated and managed care. So that's essentially what we are presenting here, that you actually start with screening using this device, especially for heart, right? Where has it gone? Yeah, it tends to get lost. I lost one on the stall, right? So you need to be careful. But you know, just this device you can use for screening, but then that's not the only objective. The objective is to be able to see that how, using the data that comes in, we are able to do risk stratification. So that is what comes through the power of the platform, right, and technology. But then so what of it? So after you get the risk stratification, it needs to be validated. You cannot have a cardiologist, you know, screen, you know, 100 patients, 1,000 patients, or, you know, lakhs of patients. You need to see that there is some filter mechanism or some screening mechanism that you can do some risk stratification and present it to the specialist, only those 5% or 10% of patients or population which need to get a validation whether they are at risk or whether they have an undiagnosed disease which can be, you know, cured and disease reversed. And through that, provide a better managed care so that impact happens, prevention happens, disease management happens, or disease reversal happens. So that is how, you know, taking an integrated approach of bringing this whole, you know, the care cycle, right, from screening to confirmation of diagnosis to actually getting the treatment or prevention is what, you know, is the power of technology, the power of an integrated platform, using devices, using the platform, using the human touch that can, you know, help us reduce the disease burden. So this is actual data. You know, I was conducting a camp at one of my friend's company. He's the CEO and founder of a company. 37-year-old guy, does yoga, does everything. But when we actually did his check through this ECG device, he had an ectopic beat. Right? He did not know. We did his lab tests. His triglycerides were 450. His cholesterol was 296. It immediately reminded me of my own situation. And then, you know, similarly, he's doing yoga. He's very active, travels across the world, but then did not know that he actually has an underlying heart condition which any day could lead to an adverse cardiac event. Right? This is the data of actually one of the best or some of the best MNCs, right, in India, who do not shy away from even flying their employees to US to get a vaccination. So you can imagine the amount of money, the resources, and the focus they have on employee health. Through this screening device, we could say that 2% of them had atrial fibrillation, which they did not know about. 10% they have unclassified, which the AI still cannot read because it's not supposed to give or does not have an approval to give those diagnoses or indications out. But at least if we have screened 2,000, these 12% we can actually take to the specialist for a confirmation whether there's a risk that these employees have of getting an adverse cardiac event and prevent that or actually manage that or treat that.
Requesting to conclude, please, in 1 minute.
Yeah, so this is just a 30-second video. Sound. Yeah, so this is what I was talking about, completing the care cycle, care coordination with a human touch. And this is what traditionally we have been doing, how we can actually use the approach of integrated platform plus smart devices plus human touch or expertise that all of you have to actually deliver better health, preventive health, and save lives. So thanks a lot to AliveCore. Their CEO, Lokesh, is here. He's a good friend. Thank you, Lokesh. If any of one of you has not got an ECG done, please go and get it done. It takes 30 seconds. It will also tell you the name of your loved one or beloved one. Okay, so that's a special package only for this, this event, right? Anyways, thanks a lot.